There is no doubt that the socio-economic prosperity and sustainability of every society largely depends on its transport system.
That's
Craig,
right.
you know the world is counting down to the biggest football event. And Brazil, yes, in Brazil. And in 2012, Brazil actually spent $66 billion just to improve on the infrastructure, transport infrastructure, the rail, the roads. That's huge. The master plan hinges on major reforms, which includes increasing transport options, introducing the integrated transport system, optimization of current usage of road network, and securing a long-term financing of investment.
So, to build a world-class transport system, we must have in place the establishment of a well-designed strategic plan to give commuters integrated transport options that are affordable, accessible, comfortable, convenient, and effective. Tonight on the program, we shall be looking at Lamata's strategic transport master plan and its investment windows. I am Obafemi Craig.
I am Kate Harmony.
Join us after the break.
This is a news update on Lamata Half Hour. Dr. Dayo Mubirola, the Managing Director of the Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, Lamata, has called on private investors to avail themselves the opportunity of investment in the state transport sector. Dr. Mubirola, while speaking in Lagos, said the state has galvanized its transport sector with a careful plan which has been put in place in the Strategic Transport Master Plan. He said the model plan, which caters for the present and future transport challenges of the state, provides investors the opportunity to invest in many projects which have been outlined. On the level of return on investment, Mubirola noted that the past and current experiences of investors in the sector were proof of how economically viable the sector is. Speaking further, he said the state government had put in place a structured system that would ensure the security of the investor and investment with the creation of the Public-Private Partnership Office in the state. Road users along Mile 12 to Ikorodu Road have been urged to obey traffic signs and other road regulations as the construction of the Bus Rapid Transit BRT extension infrastructure progresses along that corridor. With the opening of already completed portions of the service lanes to road users, Lamata has called for caution, especially as regards obeying speed limits at various sections along the corridor. It noted that while the conditions of the road had greatly improved, this should not be taken as a license to disobey traffic and other road signs, given that construction work and activities were still ongoing at different sectors along the corridor. The authority therefore called for the cooperation and support of all road users, businesses, residents, associations and other stakeholders, as everything is being done to ensure that this project is delivered in time and on budget. That was a news update. More to come after the break.
Basically, what Lamata does is to coordinate public transportation in Lagos State, and we came up with a transport master plan.
Developed together with the World Bank, the objective of this plan is finding long-lasting solutions for the problem of transportation in Lagos. Currently under its first steps of development, the plan has already proven itself a big success, dramatically increasing the connectivity in a city in continuous expansion and enjoying an unparalleled demographic and economic growth.
Our responsibility is to ensure that we provide the necessary infrastructure to meet the growth, to improve the quality of life, to improve the standard of living, and to make Lagos a vibrant and livable city in years to come.
Lamata, think transport.
Lagos is indisputably the commercial hub of the nation, and this accounts for the population explosion of residents and the commuting public to the state. As a megacity which will continue to attract more people and investment, Lamata identifies the need to plan for the future. And this led to research and planning, which culminated in the design of the Strategic Transport Master Plan, STMP.
To have this discussion with us today, we have Dr. Frederick Oladeyinde. He is the Technical Advisor Planning Lamata. You are welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
I have seen a lot of documents I've read about the STMP, but with you here, we need a real-time definition and explanation of what the STMP is all about. Could you explain to us?
The Strategic Transport Master Plan, STMP, is a document that indicates the transport facilities and services required to take us beyond our current challenges. Our current challenges, which includes congestion, a fragmented public transport system, high level of accidents on our roads, high air pollution, and the fact that we need to be competitive with other cities around the world.
The STMP was first developed in 2009, and right now it's been reviewed and updated. Why do we need to review it, and is there anything new?
There are a lot of new stuff, but when you develop a document such as the Strategic Transport Master Plan, it needs to be reviewed every 5 years, and that's because people's travel needs change over time. Now, let's look at Lagos. There was a time where people lived and worked in metropolitan Lagos, but nowadays people live as far as Shagamu, Ota, Redeem, and then commute to Lagos. It's just extending. So people's travel patterns changing, and we need to accommodate that. So the new master plan has increased the area we're studying from the metropolitan area to actually the megacity region, which includes some part of Ogun State. Now, also over time, the population is increasing. By 2020, we're going to have about 25 million people to cater for. And in 2030, it's going to increase to about 35 million people. So you need to begin to, you need to plan ahead. And every 5 years, you need to review the situation to make sure that the infrastructure that you are actually proposing would accommodate the population that we're projecting. So yes, we've increased the space, that's the region, and we've increased the time to now 2030 rather than 2020.
The importance of transportation to the future of any state must be vibrant, because it also will affect its socio-economic prosperity.
That's correct.
And in this concern, you're still using Lagos State as our case study. What are the major transport projects so identified in the Transport Master Plan?
Well, in the current master plan, we've identified about 6 rail projects and 1 monorail. And the 6 rail project will span from, for example, Marina to Okokomaiko, which is the blue line, which we are currently developing. To the center, from Marina to Agbado, we are planning the red line. And then towards Lekki side, from Marina to also Lekki Free Trade Zone, we are planning the green line. We also have other lines such as the purple line going from Redeem to Lasso. We have the yellow line from Ota going to National Theatre. And then we have the brown line from Mile 12 to Marina. Apart from the rail lines, we have 16 BRTs. The first one we've experienced, which is from Marina to Mile 12, and then we're extending that to Ikorodu. Yes. And then we have 16 others which are placed in strategic locations in Lagos. And then apart from that, we have over 20 water routes, which we plan to connect both the rail and the BRT so that people can move seamlessly from one point to the other. And just to add to the whole thing, we're also planning a cable car, which is another innovation, which is planned to actually bypass restricted areas. So for example, if you're moving from Apapa to go to Marina, you have to, go to above the lagoon. So the The cable car is able to, to move you from Apapa to Marina without going into Lagos, and so it would reduce travel time considerably.
No.
So there are a lot of projects in the master plan currently.
You just mentioned about 7 rail lines.
That's
and
correct.
You talked about the BRT. It's obvious that the investment needed to bring this dream alive is huge.
Oh yes,
and
definitely.
I'm wondering, can the government do this alone?
No, the government cannot. The government needs about $20 billion to actually realize the master plan.
$20 billion.
$20 billion over the next 20 years. And obviously the government has other sectors such as the health sector, education to invest in. So the government is actually looking to donor agencies and the private sector to partner so that they can bring these projects to fruition.
Where can the private sector come into all of this arrangement?
Well, there's a lot of windows for the private sectors to come in. For example, the private sector can private with the government in actually providing transport infrastructure. And by that, I mean that the private sector can take it upon itself to actually build the infrastructure, and then the government would then pay whoever builds it over time. So you have this instrumental payment that you can do. Secondly, the private sector can come in and run the operations of rail, BLT, or water transport. So, I mean, by that, they will buy the rolling stock, the boats, or, the buses, and then operate over a period of time. And after that, they can then review the situation and then get another license to run over 10 years, etc. So, I mean, the private sector can simply do that and then maintain the track or the infrastructure over a period of time, and then hand everything back over to the government maybe after 10 years or 20 years.
So is that how the PPP connects with this entire project? Because
that's
the MP also talked about that.
Well, that's what PPP is all about. The infrastructure actually belongs to the government, but the private sector is coming in to run the operation, to provide the service, and then give it back to the government over a period of time. And it's important that the private sector come in because they have a better way of managing infrastructure, and because they're profit-oriented or they're profit-driven, they would, they would make sure that the whole operation is managed efficiently, and not the way that we've seen it run in the past. When it's in the hands of the public sector.
Then, is the master plan already being implemented?
Some bit of the master plan are being implemented, and I'll give you some example. The Blue Line is part of the master plan, and we started construction around 2009, 2010, and it's being developed in phases. Hopefully by 2016 we should start running the first operation of the Blue Line. So that's part of the master plan.
So what is the level of private investment already being secured?
Now, that's a good example of a PPP where the government is actually providing the infrastructure, but the government is already talking to a preferred concessionaire who would maintain, buy the rolling stock, and operate the business. So you have the private sector providing the service there, and then the government providing the infrastructure. And number two, is the extension of the BLT from mile 12 to Ikorodu. That was also part of the master plan. And that's a typical example of where the government is providing the infrastructure, and then a concessionaire would now run the operation. We have the Red Line, which is at the advanced stage of detailed design, and hopefully we will get the go-ahead to start building early next year. And apart from that, obviously the existing BLT was part of the old master plan, and that's already running. So we have other projects in the pipeline coming in, coming up.
What is the impact of this implementation on the state transport system?
Well, I can talk about what's already happened now and then the projected impact. But let me talk about the current BLT. I think it's well documented that the current BLT saved people about 30% of travel time. It saves them 30% of their fares, so it's cheaper to actually travel on the BRT. And the air pollution along that corridor has decreased by about 30%. Now, when you look at the Blue Line, if you traverse that corridor, which is from Okokomaiko to Marina, it takes you on average about 3 hours. And once we're able to implement the rail line, it will take you about 37 minutes. Now, that's a huge...
That's a lot.
That's a lot of savings in travel time. And also, it's going to be cheaper to actually commute that corridor. So that's the projected benefit. The BRT from mile 12 to Ikorodu would take you about 25 to 30 minutes to traverse. But currently, we do that in over an hour. I mean, if you travel from Ikorodu in the morning, it's really congested, and it's just tough to get to central Lagos from Ikorodu. And obviously, the fares would also be almost the same as what we have currently, so there'll be some savings there.
It will also affect the economy.
Oh, yes, yes, it would affect the economy because, I mean, people will be able to move seamlessly from one point to the other. One important thing about the infrastructure that we're developing is that we're trying to reduce social exclusion. We're trying to connect to a lot of communities. There are some communities that are not well, you know, I mean, it's very difficult to get to those communities because the transport to infrastructure to those areas are not, they're not well developed. And in reducing poverty in Lagos, it's important that people are able to get to activity centers and, you know, participate in some kind of economic activities. So that's one of the goals. So if you're able to get a lot of people to, you know, get them into employment, get them to participate, we can reduce poverty and then we can increase the prosperity of the economy of Lagos State. And another point I need to make is that, especially with the poor community, about 40% of their income goes on transportation. We need to reduce that to about 20%. So by providing an efficient public transport system where they can use one card, rather than paying for various modes of transport, we can get that down. And then there'll be more money in their pocket, and then they can do other stuff with that. So everything ties in, you know, in a way to economic prosperity.
Would you now say, given all you have said, that the transport sector in Lagos State is viable in terms of investment returns, and if that can be supported with statistics?
Yes, it is. And the good thing is that we have the numbers. Now, let me give you some statistics. Currently, we're about 20 million people in Lagos. We generate about 22 million trips per day. Of those 22 million trips, 10 million of those trips are public transport trips that we have to cater for. In the next 20 years, the number of public transport trips will double. Okay, so we have the numbers. What we don't have is the capacity to cater for those numbers. Now, in terms of public transport being a viable business, let me give you another example, the BRT that we run right now. When we ask the present operators to form a cooperative and then to buy the rolling stock and to run the operations, they went to the bank to borrow some money, and it was projected that they would be able to pay up that money in 3 years. After 18 months, they were able to pay the whole thing, and they're still making a huge profit. And that's because the population is there. People need to move from one point to the other. And even though we're promoting public transport, we are also discouraging people from buying more cars. So the numbers would always be there, and which makes it a viable business to go into. Shortly
before we go on a break, I'd like to know who can invest or who should invest?
That's a very good question. Who should invest? People with a good track record, people who have the capital and are able to attract the skills required to actually run the operation. If anybody can most of those two important components, then, they're ready to invest.
It's still Lamata half hour. Coming up, questions from our audience when we return. Stay with us. If you have just tuned in, we have been speaking with Dr. Frederick Oladeyinde, Technical Advisor Planning Lamata, and we have been discussing the Strategic Transport Master Plan and its investment windows. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome, and feel free to ask your questions or make your contributions. Can we take your questions now, please?
When you talk about master plans for a region of 20 to 25 years, so my question is all about continuity, because Nigeria, we lack that. So what happens when this government goes?
In the past, the master plan had never been approved, and that's because it had never been a robust master plan. But the current master plan has taken on board a lot of stakeholder ideas, and everybody has been bought into that plan. So once the government approves this plan, it becomes law, and it becomes difficult to actually, do something else. So that's the difference between what we've done in the past and what we're doing now.
Okay, now we have to take the last question because of time. Who's next?
You said the private sector are better in infrastructure. Why not the government leave it at a contract for the private to come in? If the privates are coming into partnership with the government, what is their own part in?
Now, the government would always own the plan. The government designs the plan and then looks for the private sector to now operate or build, some of those plans. So what the government is trying to do is the government owns the plan anyway. What the private sector is doing is to come and provide a service. And in providing a service, they also make profit for themselves. The private sector never brings its own plan. It can bring its plan in implementing what the government wants it to do, but the overall plan of providing public transport belongs to the government and not the private sector.
Well, we want to say a big thank you to our audience for your immense contributions on the subject matter. Dr. Fred, having taken questions from our audience, what will be your parting words?
For the public, the Strategic Transport Master Plan is our document. And by that, I mean your document. In developing and implementing the projects in the master plan, we would begin to engage you to find out your concerns. And it's very important that we take your concerns on board when we're implementing these projects so that we can implement what is efficient and what is useful to you. And for the private sector, the windows have been open for you to come and participate. The projects have been laid out in the master plan. We have done our analysis, and we invite you to come and do yours also. But most importantly, come and partner with the government to build a vibrant Lagos megacity.
Dr. Fred, we appreciate your time with us today. Thank you so much for being a part of this program.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. It's still Lamata half hour. We'll be right back. You can connect with us by using the details now appearing on your screen. We would love to hear from you.
Every member of our audience goes home with a loaded Lagos Connect card. Till next week. Lamata.
Think Transport! Lagos, my home. With Lamata, Lagos is changing for the best. BRT lanes, modern rail lines, pedestrian